everybody, welcome back to my channel and welcome back to Goldie. We're still reading Goldie and we're up to chapter 4 today. So let's get straight into it. It was only a little puddle, Sammy said. I don't know why your mum got so upset. He kicked a stone between the two big maple trees at the end of the Dodson's driveway. Go! Charles, Lizzie and Sammy were walking to school together, the way they always did. Charles and Sammy were both in Mr. Mason's second grade class. Lizzie was in fourth. It had not been easy to say goodbye to Goldie. Charles could still practically see her big eyes watching him curiously as he helped Lizzie clean up the puppy's mistake. Would she still be there when he got home from school? We have to convince Mum to let her be her foster family. His fists were all balled upside inside his jacket pockets. He almost felt like he might cry. He took a deep breath. We have to make a plan, he said. First we convince Mum to let us foster Goldie. Then we convince her to let us keep her forever. Lizzie grinned at him. I'm with you, she said. Sammy bumped fists with Charles. Me too. Charles had a harder time paying attention in school that day. And it wasn't because he was making up new knock-knock jokes. It was because he couldn't stop thinking about Goldie. What was she doing? Was she still feeling scared? Was Mum making sure she had enough clean, fresh water? Was she making sure that the bean was not bothering Goldie? Mr. Mason called on Charles 3 times during math, even though Charles did not raise his hand. Subtraction was not usually hard for Charles, but today it was. First, Mr. Mason wanted to know how many cherries Anna would have left if she started with 13 and gave Charles 8. 7? Charles guessed. He knew it was wrong as soon as he said it. Mr. Mason just shook his head and moved on. Later, he tried Charles again. What if I had 11 elephants and I gave you 3? Charles pictured 3 huge elephants squeezed trunk to tail into his living room. Then he pictured a tiny but ferocious Goldie running around their huge feet, barking at them. He smiled. Charles? Mr. Mason was waiting. Said Charles. 7? Again, he knew it was wrong. The third time, Charles didn't even hear Mr. Mason called on him. Sammy finally poked Charles in the side. Wake up, said Sammy. Charles didn't know what the question was. 7? He guessed. Correct, said Mr. Mason with a big smile. Now you're getting it. The only time Charles really paid attention was during reading partners' time, when his class went down to the hall to read with their kindergarten friends. Charles had a partner called Oliver, a funny little boy who wore big glasses. Oliver always wanted to read about dogs. That day he showed Charles a book called Why Do Dogs Bark? They were full of interesting facts about dogs. Charles was happy to read that book with Oliver. It made him think of Goldie. Finally, school was over. It was time to go home and see Goldie again. Charles could have run the whole way home, but Lizzie and Sammy were walking along slowly, talking about how to convince Mum to let them keep Goldie. I spent my whole turn on the computer looking up how to housebreak puppies, Lizzie reported. 4th graders got a half an hour of computer time every day. She showed them a bunch of articles she had printed out. Goldie's so smart. She'll learn to go to the bathroom outside in no time. I had this great idea, Sammy said. We just need a tiny tape recorder that we can hide under your parents' bed. Charles stared at his friend. What? Sammy was always coming up with the wildest ideas. It's easy, said Sammy. We just make this tape that says, you want a dog, you love dogs, you love Goldie, you want to keep her. He was talking like a robot. Then we leave it under your mum's bed so it plays at night while she's sleeping. He explained in his normal voice. So she gets kind of, hypnotized. Lizzie laughed. You want me to hypnotize my mum? Right, said Sammy. Believe me, it'll work. I saw this guy at the fair last year. He convinced a lady that she was a chicken. She was squawking and flapping her wings. And Charles had tuned out. He was thinking about Goldie again. He could hardly wait to pick her up and hold her in his arms. Sammy went home to check on Rufus, and Charles and Lizzie went up their walk. Mum opened the door when she was on their front steps. She looked very tired. Her hair was all scraggly. The bean was on the floor by her right foot, and Goldie was by her left foot. Uff! Barked Goldie. She looks happy to see Charles and Lizzie. Uff! Barked the bean. He looked happy too. Mum was holding something in his hand. It was one of her running shoes, or at least something that used to be a shoe. "Mum," said Lizzie, holding up her articles, I bet I can housebreak Goldie in 1 week. And I'll make a bed for Goldie in my room so I can watch her at night." And Mum held up her hand, the one that wasn't clutching the chewed up sneaker. "Don't even bother to try and convince me. I've already made up my mind," she said. "But Mum," Charles said. "I knew it," Lizzie wailed. "I knew you wouldn't let her keep it." Mum looked at Charles to Lizzie and back to Charles again. "Don't you want to wait and hear what I decided before you get up all upset?" she asked. "Come on, let's go have a snack and talk about it." She led them to the kitchen. Goldie trotted ahead on her, slipping and sliding a little bit on the wood floor. The bean ran along on his short little legs, yelling, "Dodie! Dodie!" "Dodie?" Lizzie asked. This was a new word for the bean. "It's how he says Goldie," her mum explained, as she put a bowl of grapes and a plate of chocolate chip cookies on the table. "He is crazy about that dog. All he wanted to do all day was follow her around and do everything she did. He even tried to drink from her water bowl." Charles looked down at the bean and shook his head. Who else had a little brother who thought he was a dog? "So we're not keeping Goldie?" he asked. "Well, we are keeping Goldie for good," she said. "But she's sweet to the bean, so she can stay for a little while. Just until we can find her a really good home." Their mum patted Goldie on the head. "She deserves the best." "Mum!" Lizzie threw her arms around her mother. Charles couldn't believe his ears. "Really? Really? Goldie is staying with us?" "Only for a while," his mother answered. "Don't forget that part." She looked down at the bean. He was tugging at one of his shoelaces while Goldie tugged at the other. It's great for the bean to have such a good friend, but this family is not ready to have a full-time dog. Not yet. Charles nodded. "Right," he said. He was sure he could convince his mother to keep Goldie forever. He slid off his chair and sat on the floor next to Goldie. He trotted right over, climbed up into his lap, and started chewing on his ear. It tickled. Charles laughed and kissed the top of his puppy's silky head. Goldie liked that. This boy made him feel happy and safe. She was so glad to see him again. It had seemed like forever since he had gone away. Goldie wagged her little tail as hard as she could as she nibbled and licked and nuzzled. By now Lizzie had joined Charles on the floor. "Let me hold her for a minute," she said. "Here, Goldie." Happily, Goldie climbed over to explore Lizzie's ears. The girl was also wonderful. She smelled good and tasted even better. But then the bean started to nibble on Charles's ears. "Hey," said Charles. "Mom, tell him I'm not a dog." "I've been trying to tell him that all day," his mum said, laughing. Then she sat down at the table and got serious. "So here's the deal," she said. "You two were going to be responsible for this puppy whenever you are home. That means you walk her, you feed her, you make sure she has water, and don't forget our goal. We need to make sure Goldie goes to the best possible home." She looked at Charles and then at Lizzie. "If you do a really good job fostering Goldie, I might start to believe that this family will be ready for a puppy of our own sometime soon." Charles and Lizzie were nodding eagerly. "Okay, Mum," Charles said. "We'll start training her right away," Lizzie promised. "It will be easier to find her a good home for a puppy that behaves. Oh, and one more thing," Mum added. "You also have to take care of your regular chores. We don't want your rooms to become disaster areas just because we have a puppy in the house." She looked at Charles when she said that. Lizzie was tidy, but Charles's room was usually a mess. No falling behind on schoolwork. This time she looked at Lizzie, who sometimes waited to do her homework till the last minute. "No problem," said Charles, even though he hated cleaning his room. "Absolutely, Mum," promised Lizzie. She held Goldie up and rubbed noses with the pup. "We'll do anything to keep you around, right, sweetie?" Goldie stuck out her tongue and licked Lizzie's nose. Then she clambered down and started to sniff the floor. Lizzie jumped up. "That means she has to pee," she said. "When she sniffs like that, we have to get her outside right away. Then we praise her for doing it outside." Charles scooped up Goldie and ran for the back door. As soon as he got outside, he put her outside and watched proudly as she ran straight onto the lawn and squatted. "Good girl," he said. "You're such a good girl." Goldie didn't know why the boy was so happy, but it made her happy too. She ran to him, and when he picked her up, she licked his face all over. Charles and Lizzie spent the rest of the afternoon in Lizzie's room. Charles had Lizzie's computer on and all her dog books out. While Charles rolled around on the floor with Goldie, Lizzie told her all about puppy training. These are the most important things for a puppy to learn are. She held up 3 fingers. Where to do your business, how to get along with other dogs and with people, and what your name is. Goldie already knows her name, don't you, Goldie? Goldie stopped chewing on Charles's foot just enough to look up. Her eyes were bright and her ears were pricked up. Good girl, Lizzie smiled at her. So we just have to work on the first 2. Housebreaking and socializing. Socializing is the word dog trainers use for making friends, Lizzie explained to Charles. Goldie's already learning how to go to the bathroom outdoors, and she gets along well with people. Pretty soon we should start having her meet other dogs. Her mum and her brothers and sisters taught her a little bit about doggy manners, but she'll need more practice. Charles knew Lizzie was probably right, but she was having too much fun with Goldie to think about training her. At the moment, they were playing a game where she pretended his foot was a big scary monster. He kept it very still while she bravely kept up on it. Then, just as he was about to pounce, he wiggled his foot and Goldie tumbled backwards. The next time she crept up, he let her pounce and get the monster. She growled tiny puppy growls as she wrestled with his sock, trying to pull it off his foot. After a few rounds, Goldie stopped suddenly, wandered over the soft rug next to Lizzie's bed, curled up and fell asleep. For a while, Charles and Lizzie just stared at her. She was so cute with one paw over her nose. Okay, next, Lizzie said. We have to convince Mum that we're serious about finding Goldie a great home. But I want this to be her home, Charles complained. Lizzie sighed. Me too. But for now, we're just her foster home, and that means it's our job to find her the best forever family. Charles sighed. We can make a sign, he suggested. Lizzie was great at using her computer to make signs and birthday cards. She got right to work. How does this look? She asked a few minutes later. She showed Charles a sign decorated with a picture of a golden retriever. Perfect puppy needs a good home. It's read. The Petersons' phone number was on the bottom. It looks good. Maybe too good. We don't really want someone to take her away, do we? He was still wishing that they could keep Goldie forever. Charles, Lizzie said, I really don't think Mum is ready for a full-time dog. But if we do a good job with Goldie, it'll show her how responsible we can be. She looked at her sign again. Still, we don't want to give up Goldie too soon. She took out the word perfect. Better? She asked. When Charles nodded, she printed out 10 copies. Charles, Lizzie, called their mother from downstairs. Time to set the table for dinner. They took one of the signs to show their mum and left the others in a pile near Lizzie's backpack by the door. Let's let Goldie sleep, Charles suggested. She's had a busy day. They tiptoed out of the room and down the stairs. Goldie woke up a few minutes later. She stretched and yawned to look out for her people. Where were they? They had gone away and left her all alone. This was her chance to sniff and explore this fun new place. Goldie roamed around all over Lizzie's room, discovering exciting new smells and tastes in every corner. Finally, Goldie wandered over to the door. There was a pile of scratchy, fresh new papers. Goldie had been wishing for something to chew and tear apart. These papers looked just right. She dove into the pile and got to work. Yay! Chapter 4 and 5 is finished. And hopefully you guys really enjoyed this video. And I'll see you next time for Chapter 6. Bye!